Hey everyone, today we are looking at interventionist supply side policies. That's one of the two types of supply side policies. So let's get into it. If this moves, cool. So we're going to be focusing on supply. Just to recap, demand side policies, what they do is minimize those harmful fluctuations in the business cycle. So remember all those downs in the business cycle, the downturns, recessions, etc., they cause some pain for people. So we try to minimize them and just have a smooth, slower growth. So that's what the fiscal and monetary policy aim to do. But supply side, we aim to increase growth long term, and long term growth is represented by the long run aggregate supply curve, because that represents the potential of the economy. So what shifts that? That's what supply side policy is going to do. Well, we can increase the quantity of resources and we can increase the quality of resources. So we should remember that from our work on production possibilities curves. The LRS is a very similar concept. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. And while we're at it, any sort of increase in productivity will help as well. So I'd throw that in there because, it's generally related to these two, but I want to make sure that your brain captures all the possibilities that could increase the LRS. And that's what it looks like, of course. So, supply side policies. Interventionist, it's the government getting involved with direct policies. They want to do things that will increase potential output. And the other type, which will be in the next video, market-based. So that's when the economy becomes more like a free market. So the government gets out of the way and just lets the free market do its thing. So a way of thinking about these policies is that interventionist is when the government gets more involved, they intervene. It's more towards a central planning economic system, whereas a market-based policy is the government withdrawing any intervention, and therefore it's more like a free market economic system. Of course, we don't reach these extremes with these policies, but that's where they're moving towards on the spectrum, I guess. All right, so let's look at some examples of interventionist supply side policies. First one, education. So this can also include any type of training as well. That's very similar. So a big one that the state government did a few years ago is they decided that year sevens would be better off in high school. Now, the only reason they would have done that is because they think they're going to get a better education, which means they're going to be better quality resources in the future, as a very dehumanizing way of talking about students, but that's what it is. So what's going to happen in the short run? There's an AD shift. That's when the government spends the money, right? So they spent a lot of money. It costs more to educate students in high school because there are more teachers involved, right? So increase in aggregate demand, that will make that change. But then in the long run, we get the LRAS and the SRAS shift. Why do they happen? Well, the LRAS, that increases the potential output because they increase quality of resources. And SRAS will shift as well because in the long run, there should be lower cost production because all the resources are better. So anytime the LRAS moves, the SRAS will move with it. So remember that, okay? That's important. Now, we'll look at another example, healthcare. So investing in human capital. So the government, there's always some sort of increase in healthcare spending. In recent years, there's been big boosts to mental health spending, for example. Very similar idea here. In the short run, you get the spending, right? The spending is government spending, increases aggregate demand. And then in the longer run, once those policies have taken effect, so let's say improving mental health, it's an ongoing process, it takes a while. Only in the long run do we get the LRAS and SRAS shifts. So it's a little confusing that as a result of these policies, the SRAS shifts, but only in the long run. It's a little bit confusing. So the best way to think about it is that it shifts LRS, and anytime LRAS shifts, so does the short run aggregate supply. Okay, so again, we're increasing potential output, we're making higher quality resources because people are healthier. You could also argue it increases the quantity of resources because it can help keep people alive. And same deal with before, you get more efficient workforce, you get a lower cost of production. Okay, thirdly, we're going to look at infrastructure. Infrastructure is not an investment in human capital. That is a mistake, a rare mistake from me, unbelievable. It's an investment in the large man-made systems that can help an economy grow. We'll talk about how you could define infrastructure a bit later on. That's not important right now, but we understand it's the spending on things like roads, rail, schools, hospitals, like the actual buildings, schools and hospitals. And what they will do in the short run, big increase in aggregate demand. So I think this is a picture of the Darlington, like a mock-up picture of the Darlington interchange. So all that spending that they did, it was, I think, about $700 million in the end. All that spending in the short run was government spending. So that was really the build phase. We didn't get any benefit from it, for years, because it actually made things slower for a long time while they were building it. But then in the long run, we get our LRAS shift, and with it, the SRAS shift, because we can increase potential output, right? We can have greater mobility of resources. We can do things more efficiently, right? So it increases potential output. We've got more resources at our disposal. The roads, in this example, are a resource. And lower cost of production. We've got people on the road for less time. That is going to lower costs, lower petrol consumption, that sort of thing. Now, what's good about interventionist supply side policies? So we've got some benefits. It increases potential output. All of them have done that. I just wanted to outline it clearly here. And what we can do is we can meet all the macroeconomic objectives. So let's have a look back at the diagram. And here we go. We're keeping inflation low and stable. We're clearly having economic growth. Look at what's happening on the real GDP axis. And if we're increasing real GDP, we are reducing unemployment. So that's meeting all three objectives at once, which is really nice because fiscal and monetary policy didn't really do that. There was always a conflict, wasn't there? But let's look at some constraints. There's no perfect policy. That's what I've said quite a lot. No such thing as a perfect economic policy. So what's going to happen here? April 2016, this is when this building started on the Darlington interchange, all of that. So we get an increase in government spending there, April 2016. So we have inflation there in the short term. It's only when it gets completed 4 years later that we actually get the lower inflation. So in the short term, we get high inflation. It's potentially painful. 2016, inflation wasn't an issue, doesn't matter. But we get a long lag between that initial spending and then the benefits, which reduce the costs and reduce inflation. So we get that short-term inflation. That's what we're going on about here. Short-term inflation came up finally there. And we've also got time lags. So if we think of this sort of policy, year 7 to high school, let's have a closer look at it. The first year 7s entered high school in public schools, 2022. First high school educated year 7s joined the adult workforce, so they've finished year 12. They joined the workforce in 2028. And the first high school educated year 7s complete post-secondary study, so tertiary study, university, let's say, 2031. That's not all of them, that's some of them will do it in 2031. And by the time half the workforce has benefited from that extra year of high school, 2060. Now, that is a long time in the future, so there is a big time lag before we actually get the benefits of all this extra spending that has happened. So, huge time lags with supply side policies, that they aren't quick fixes at all. Some of the spending boost, but that's really a fiscal policy. So that spending just to stimulate the economy. When we're looking at supply side policies, we're looking at long-term policies. Okay, and cost. So Darlington upgrade, $754 million it cost, which clearly doesn't match that picture, but this one does. Year 7s to high school, ongoing annual cost, apparently budgeted $40 million. And the transition to that was a lot bigger as well, because they had to build buildings at a lot of schools. So there was a huge capital upfront cost as well to that. So time lags, cost, big constraints here. All right, that is all we need to talk about for this video. So I will leave it there.